Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, once our guests present, I love to welcome them because I know they're coming with a couple of things that are very expensive. First, their time. I want to thank you, Doc, for your time. And second, I want to thank you for entrusting us with your journey, because housed within that is wisdom. It is all the principles that you have learned and manage your life from that space. And you have come here to share it with us so that we can eat from your palate, so that we can enjoy and become the best human spirits possible while we're here on this planet. Doc, welcome to Threads of Enlightenment.
Well, thank you so much, Ken, for having me. I just resonate with your mission completely.
Thank you so much. Tell the people what you have created, because I try to educate them and make them aware that they are all creators. Whatever their life is today is what they have created. And so I want you to tell them those things that you have created so far, because I know creators are always on the move. So tell them what you have gotten so far.
Well, I think we all create throughout our life. And
Yes.
so, we are not really a product of some sort of end result. I think that we are beautiful souls and human beings on a journey. And, in some ways, I'd like to say, even though I'm an author of many books, I am a creator of a safe space for people to, handle their challenges with love and goodness. And so I try to bring that message that, we are beautiful souls and we are made of love. And yes, we all have adversities in our lives, but we can take these challenges and learn and grow from them as part of our journey. And, how it presents itself is unique for each individual person. Yes, I am an author of books I have created to help bring awareness to certain topics and have those conversations. But I'm also just an everyday person like you and me who's living my life and trying to make an impact just in a very authentic way by being myself and embracing the journey.
I think that's the key to us all, is embracing that journey. And that journey is, once you are awake, it continues until you die. And that's the beauty of this journey, is that we are getting to learn more and more about who we are. And from that space, we are able to then express ourselves. When I went on my journey, Doc, about self-love and starting to love myself, from my relationship with my God, he taught me about loving myself and loving him. And coming from that space, I was able then to love people differently and stronger, deeper, more meaningful than just saying it and actually understanding what it is. I want you to talk to us, introduce us to your family, your upbringing, because that's the place where we are started. Our family start to program us, we start looking at the world certain ways from that space. Introduce us to your family background, siblings, that kind of thing.
Well, sure. I grew up in Lake Forest, Illinois. I was born in Miami, Florida, where my mother's family was from. But I spent basically a lifetime in the Chicago suburbs. And I am the daughter of two wonderful people. Unfortunately, they did not stay together after 14 years or so. And
Wow.
my two brothers and I really struggled with a broken family. And so many people do. So many people have to kind of endure the challenges that their parents faced. And, in my case, it really wasn't until even my 60s that I could really go back and put the pieces of the puzzle together to try to understand my intergenerational trauma that led to me being a target for certain things like abuse or being an overgiver or an extreme empath, someone who did not necessarily have healthy boundaries, partly because of that whole self-love component that you mentioned. That
Yeah.
is something that evolves. But, anyway, I did have a very, very positive childhood in so many ways. And, even the negatives and the challenges, I believe I can turn them around to be a positive on my growth journey, because I think that all makes up who we are. My parents did not provide a foundation of religion or spirituality. I grew up in an atheist household, so I was someone just not exposed to that. I sort of
Hmm.
knew it was out there, but it wasn't part of the foundation of who I was. There was no blind faith and, no reliance on a higher power of any kind. But in my heart of hearts, ever since I was younger, I really always looked at things with a positive lens and just had somehow the inner drive to keep moving forward and becoming independent. And because my parents also, I grew up in the 60s. And so, it was a different time as far as just societal parenting,
Yeah.
parenting. And, although there were some very, structured, very strict families in my neighborhood,
Hmm.
who really had their thumb on their kids. I was not one of those kids. We were kind of left on our own to kind of fend for ourselves in many ways.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was even, for food. Sometimes it was just
Wow.
we were alone most of our days. And but in some ways, some people might look at that as a negative, and there are some negative parts to that.
Hmm.
But there are some positives in that you become more self-sufficient. You
Yeah.
don't rely on external forces to bring yourself joy and, happiness. You learn to be creative.
Hmm.
Definitely something that my parents instilled in me was a love of nature, and that has carried through to my adulthood. So definitely the wonder of just the beauty, and I can say now of God's great earth, to be
Yeah.
able to experience this, has just been phenomenal. But because of my upbringing, and there were some negatives, definitely negatives, and as I'm finding out now when I'm unpacking it all, um,
Hmm.
a lot of this really contributed to me carrying out the same intergenerational patterns and choosing people in my life that weren't necessarily healthy, but that's kind of what I knew.
Yeah.
I did experience domestic violence as a child, more from just, observing what my mother went through, but I also experienced this, in my own world. I went on to start college at a very early age, very driven to be successful,
Hmm.
but also just enjoyed life and enjoyed, um, uh, people and enjoyed experiences. Always had a love of travel. One big experience that I did have as a kid, is that I lived in Athens, Greece for a year, in when I was about 10 or 11. And that experience really, was so positive in my, love of travel and exploring other places, but also just of acceptance and connection with people from around the world. I was
Wow.
someone who grew up, it didn't matter what the color of your skin was, what religion you were, what your background was. I was just loving, I looked at people as humans and
Yeah.
just connected with people on a soul level. But I did have some challenges, later on when I got married, and then eventually kind of escaped that situation after 27 years. So I've had
Wow.
my challenges, and I think the challenges, are put in our path to help us grow and keep on evolving on our journey.
I absolutely agree with you. I think they're there. I mean, when we change our perspective within the journey, within the hard times, or when we change our perspective within that space, is when the changes begin to happen. Because once we focus on it, one particular, the negative aspect of that, of the negativeness, if you will, once we focus on that, we kind of lock ourselves into it. But when we switch our perspective as to what we can gain out of it, what it can bring to us from a different angle, then we then begin to take the steps necessary to create what we this new perception is. You had talked about your family separating. How old were you when this took place?
I think that I was in my junior high years. So
Mm-hmm.
really during probably the most challenging time, when they're growing as being a preteen. So it was a challenging time, and it was an extremely contentious divorce. My mother was extremely traumatized and actually struggled even many years before the actual divorce,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with my father's infidelities and just being gaslit to not feel as worthy or capable as she really was. My mother was such an intelligent, very witty human being that I think was really stifled in the role that she was or who she was with. And
Yeah, yeah.
and that's just so unfortunate. And there are trauma bonds that are formed. I've
Oh,
learned
yes.
so much on this journey. So I've
Yes.
learned why she stayed as long as she did, because I stayed in a marriage 27 years
Mm.
before my light bulb moment to where I just said enough is enough. My values of love and honesty and goodness just did not resonate with who I was with, and I ignored red flags for so long. And I think also, in my mom's case, it was a different era. It was a
Yeah,
different time
yeah,
where there wasn't much communication or support or literature, on toxic family dynamics and how to cope.
yeah. It was coming. That was the beginning of it. The 60s was when the society as a whole started to experience the separation within the families, mostly where it began to be seen. The 50s, of course, everything is nice, and in America, there was this newness. These guys were coming back from the war, and it started all this growth and all the different things. So they didn't have all of the the support system, as you said, as we have today, where a woman, when she is in a situation that is dangerous, that she's able to move and be protective and be safe. So how
Right.
did
And in
this
and in
happen?
speaking with
Go
that
ahead.
too, Ken, it should be
Yeah.
said that, domestic abuse is not just, a gender specific thing, that there are males that, husbands that are domestically abused as well.
Oh, I
And
know a few. Yeah.
not a lot of support for them. You don't
Yeah.
see men's shelters and that type
Yeah.
of thing. So
Yeah.
I think we're coming to realize that really that can happen both ways. I mean, so that I just wanted to acknowledge that it's
Oh, yeah. There is. It's human. It's a human behavior, and it's not gender specific. I know of men that are in that situation,
sure.
and the reasons as to why they stay as is almost just the same as.
Yep.
How old were you, as you said? How did that affected you as an individual? Because that is a traumatic situation within a family unit. You are in your formative years, and how did that divorce and the battle within the family dynamic, how did it affect you, Dr. Marni, as an individual? This young girl seeing all of this trauma, what did she start to perceive? How did she started to perceive? How did she started to act and behave based on her perception, so forth?
Looking back, I think that I was just super driven to get out,
Yeah.
to physically remove myself from the situation. I left high school after 3 years, graduated early, and I was young for my class anyway. And I knew for me, college was my ticket out. And
Hmm.
so I started college at a really young age. So I think part of my coping was just to escape it and just get the
Yeah.
heck
Yeah.
out of it. And to also be very, very independent. Like I did not want help from anyone. I was going to make it on my own, and I was going to create my own success. And,
Mm-hmm.
I carried that on, up until I got married. And at some point, I partnered with someone who engaged in a lot of gaslighting after the love bombing phase. And, I just didn't understand narcissistic personality type individuals. And so, the confidence and drive and all that I had that really was, made up who I was as a result of my childhood traumas, slowly got turned around. I mean, luckily, I still kept a job throughout this whole experience, my whole
Mm-hmm.
27-year marriage. I was a high school teacher for 35 years in the Chicago suburbs. And, so I had that going for me. I also had always a lifelong learner. So I had a drive
Yeah. Yeah.
to continue my education. So in 1997, only after just a short 3 or 4 years, I earned my doctorate degree in education.
Wow.
And after, even after when I chose to divorce my husband, I went on to do postdoctoral work at Harvard. And
Wow.
because I just am a lifelong learner and I wanted to be the best teacher I could be, even though I was fairly close to retirement,
Mm-hmm.
well, actually, I was probably 6 or 7 years away from retirement. I just knew that my growth was very important. That
Yeah.
was something
Yeah.
someone could not take away. They can take away my house, they can take away all my money, they can take away my support system of friends,
Mm-hmm.
family, neighbors, that type of thing. They can even try to take my health and my job, which, he was not successful with. I even experienced parental alienation. And I still am
Wow.
experienced that almost a decade later, the loss of your living children, to being aligned with an abuser. And
Yeah.
and that is one of the most devastating experiences I've had in my life. But instead of just looking at it as a completely negative experience, because it's very easy to do that, when there's
Yeah.
false narrative that, takes what means the most to you away from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I still had a spirit within me to keep going and to find the good in the journey, and realize that I can't control what other people do. I can only control myself and how I
Mm-hmm.
respond. And I believe that, I've had some divine intervention. I believe God has
Oh yeah.
really been with me on this journey. And without God in my life, I think I might go down a road of just, self pity and just sort of giving up. But I but
Mm-hmm.
I am not, and even though I've suffered significant losses, and I know there's a lot of people in your audience that either resonate with my exact story, or they have their own challenges in their lives that have brought them to a point of just despair. And you really can go one way or the other. And I think with God's love and with our own values, our own within us, our integrity, and the whole journey that has gotten us to this point, when we start to do the work, which
Mm-hmm.
includes self-reflection, which
Yeah.
includes taking some ownership into how you got into the situation you're in. What are those past traumas that made you a target for
Yeah.
whatever situation you're in? I think when you do that and then you practice self-love, and you live in gratitude. I live in
Yeah.
gratitude every single moment of the day. And I think that can see us through such challenging times here on earth.
Talk to us now, because you're mentioning that you've gone through much, and it's usually and I hear your story, and I know that the patterns that kind of guided you to um, picking this man and all of that. When did you said you were there for quite a long time? And I know within that space is you have like certain moments of light coming in And you said the red flags. I tell people those red flags are there to basically save us. But we ignore them because we'll say stuff. I remember mine. Oh, she's such a beautiful person. She likes the same thing I like. All of these things, we tend to talk our spiritual being out of that little, because they know the truth, and so they're trying to warn us. But we take our soulless mind, and we're looking at the natural aspect of those individual, their beauty. They talk well, they walk well. I got this, I got that. But our inside is going, run, and we bypass there and we sit like you did for several years. And then what happened to cause your awakening, as they say, where you realized, okay, this is not it. I personally need to do something different for me, the individual. And what was it that caused that? And what did you do? Because that is an important place to receive your revelation, if you will, as to who you are. Talk to us a little about that.
Right, right, sure. And yes, you do ignore red flags. I even had red flags before I got married. And and
Me
and
too.
I was actually engaging in projection because I was a loving, honest, good person. I just assumed that my partner or who I surrounded myself with had those same values.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted this perfect family, this American dream, this, fairy tale life. And so I was blinded by all of that. And then, of course, when you get very busy, and in my case,
Yeah.
working many
Yeah.
jobs, as well as raising a family, and, involved in many activities, it's very easy to just get wrapped up in the day to day.
Yeah.
And so between that and your own denial, you just keep it going for so long. But, you asked if there was, like, what was my awakening moment? It really was very, very unexpected. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it was extremely unintentional in my on my ex-husband's part. We were just having pizza dinner at the local
Mm-hmm.
pub with one of our adult children, and he made some confessions. He There was some money manipulation that he kind of informed us that he did, and
Wow.
I had gone through years and years of now I know it's financial abuse, but there was constant money manipulation. And when it carried over from abusing me to abusing one of our children, I think
Yeah.
that was my light bulb. Even though I've lost that child aligned with the person who stole, her
Wow.
money and all of that. Um, and I'm learning about why that happens, why they align like that. But I think it was just that moment with that and many other confessions. It was almost like, his mask slipped, and, he had this false persona, and, just kept going along. And I think throughout the years, the 27 years, he would kind of test me to see how much I would take and not
Mm-hmm.
confront him or not leave or whatever. And that this was just a very big defining moment. It was almost like it was decided for me in a way. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
finally like I saw the light. It wasn't like I really thought, okay, well, I know there's going to be repercussions. Let me think this through. Let me give him another chance. Because I've been gaslit so much. Maybe I didn't hear what I heard or know what I know, and
Mm-hmm.
but somehow there was a force within me, deep in my soul, some divine, awakening, I think,
Yeah.
happened. And I actually, for someone who normally would have talked things out or ignored it and thought the best, I kind of went silent, I knew immediately I was going to escape. And
Mm-hmm.
I was scared to death, because I wasn't sure of what he is capable of. And I don't live in fear of him anymore, but he sure is, even still 10 years, after I filed for divorce, is still trying to engage me, taking me to court, just obsessed with keeping that false narrative, and and trying to destroy me at all costs. But he doesn't realize I got God on my side, and God is not going to be destroyed. But that was the defining moment. And then it wasn't that much long after that, a day or two, where I was physically threatened by him. And I was, shoved up to a wall with a statement of, and I was hurt, but with a statement of, don't you dare divorce me. And if you divorce me, I will take your home, your money, and your children. And that, then it really confirmed, if I had any doubt in my mind before, at that pizza dinner, I certainly didn't have any doubt then. Not only was it a physical assault, but it seemed so strange for me, the threat, because, a reasonable person would say, let's talk about this, or I'm sorry, or even say, listen, I don't want to be married. I've been having lots of affairs with other people, and, I just don't love you in that way anymore. You would think that there would be some sort of reasonable dialogue but to be threatened, don't you dare divorce me. And I had never even mentioned divorce, so he obviously knew that I knew, and the game was over.
Yeah, the energy that you probably emanated changed any sense that and knew that something was different. How did you, coming out of that, Doc, because that is a traumatic situation, the divorce itself and your child siding with that person that is causing you all of this trauma. That is tremendous amount of trauma. How did you begin to build you up? Because you are going to be at this space suffering a lot of pain, a lot of stuff that is happening in you, a lot of less than thoughts. How did you begin to rebuild yourself as an individual, as a woman, to become a strong woman as you are today? How did that building start? And it always, one block up and one block. And talk to us about that process and how you kind of started to heal from that.
Well, I think the healing really came from within, because I was someone who, first of all, never really needed external validation. I didn't need, even though I had a degree and I had this accomplishment and that accomplishment, and, I had come so far, that was all external stuff. And I really believe that what makes us is what's from the inside. And so I think it was my inside. First, of course, you're in survival mode. When you're homeless and you lost all your money, and you just are. I mean, you're just blindsided by all of this. I think some of it is just kind of just putting one foot in front of the other, especially financially. I mean, he's such a financial manipulator. It was very hard when I had to do a lot of uncovering, even with a forensic accountant, to find out all the fraudulent things, the unethical financial dealings. And that was traumatic, because, I'm just trying to make ends meet. And I had no idea that God would provide. And at that time, so I was kind of in survival mode. I was working many jobs in addition to my full-time day job teaching. I was a graduate school adjunct professor. I was tutor. I was, just trying to sell things so much. And actually, one of the experiences was having this garage sale that was life-changing, So that happened pretty early on, where I had this garage sale and I was just shown some spiritual miracles. And I really got the feeling that God was with me and protecting me, and that I would be okay. There were just so many signs and synchronicities. And anyone who has kind of had a near-death experience, and so many people, thousands of it, have met Jesus, have met God, have been surrounded by angels and supported by the divine. I actually, without physically dying, had a spiritual awakening that I think was a catalyst to my survival, and really realizing that there's a bigger picture going on here, that I can suffer all these losses. But that doesn't, my internal knowing was going to support me and be there. And, I did have a couple years left to teach. And, so while I was trying to pick up the pieces of this just very contentious situation with such a high conflict manipulator, trying to navigate the court system, which is just
Oh, that's a
very,
beast.
very challenging. I mean, like seriously, like 14, 15 lawyers later, I'm still trying to separate from my abuser, and justice does not always prevail, but I believe truth does. And I believe
Yes.
goodness
Yes.
eventually prevails. And I'm on the side of the light, and I know I am. And, so much so that I believe I have forgiveness and compassion for my abuser and other people that went along supporting this abuser, because when you do the deep dive into your situation, you realize there are a lot of other people and situations you've surrounded yourself with that aren't necessarily, positive for you, that, you have been trauma bonded with other people as well. And so, it's definitely been part of the journey, but I believe my spiritual awakening, which led to my writing my first spiritual fiction, God Came to My Garage Sale. I think that was just a big turning point. And I think when you release, the negative from your life and you work on yourself, your self-love, your self-worth, and you take care of yourself physically. I am actually in the best health physically and emotionally than I've ever been in my life now. And, there was a time I could never even imagine that. But I'm living so authentically, so peacefully, and with so much joy and gratitude. So it's, there is hope, through these challenging situations. And when you let go and you release the negative, you make room in your heart and your soul for positive to come through. I believe. And so, I was, I was able to find love again without repeating the same traumatic patterns, learning from those intergenerational past experiences as well as that current situation, and really be more discerning about people. And I can love from afar, or I don't have to just accept anything. I can have a healthy boundary, and that's not being mean to anyone else or closing them off. It's just protecting myself. And
boundaries are not they're not bad. A lot of people
not
are
at all.
afraid to have boundaries, but it is necessary to have boundaries. And you had mentioned where even Jesus had boundaries. He would take off, and he had enough hanging around with the people, and he would just go someplace and hide. And he created boundaries and so forth. So boundaries are necessary for our survival, but I think it's also necessary for peace of mind. It is necessary for personal growth. It's all of those things in between. And so when people look at it negatively, that is their perception of what you and I would look at boundaries as something. No, this is beautiful. And so society has this programming that boundaries are negative and it's bad to have those things. But the reality is, it is a necessity within the human spirit and the human experience in order to grow. Because if you don't, you
most
get hurt.
definitely. Right. Most definitely. And in fact, sometimes people need to have boundaries with their own family members.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it is their adult children, or whether it is a sibling or a parent or extended family, or people that they might have known their whole lives. And it's not about, punishing them, or, being mean. It's really about loving yourself.
Yeah.
And realizing, hey, this is very negative, and it's not bringing me joy, and it's not productive. And at some point, it's not like there's not a point, you're at a point of no return, because people can change, but not everyone is at the same vibration and same level in their growth. And sometimes, you have to step back and step away, and you're valuing yourself. And
It is
that's a good
important.
thing. And that's a very hard thing for many of us, especially abuse victims. It's very hard for us to learn that.
Yeah, it is hard to create those. And I've heard from many abused folks, it's the same thing. And trying to locate that space by which you can manage your life, maintain your boundaries, because it's a new thing for them.
Right.
Because they're not used to that. They're always open. Their arms are wide open, bringing people into their space and not becoming, as you said, they weren't using discernment. And that's a beautiful word that you had mentioned, that is an important tool that is necessary in our life as we grow and move forward. Discerning. Who do you allow into your space?
Right.
And the fact is, when you sense that there's something wrong, there is something wrong. I used to say to my kids, if that when they would go out, and my kids tell me so many times that this thing that this little thing that I said to them as young boys, I would say to them, if it feels wrong, it is wrong. And so they would tell me that little thing saved their lives so many times when they went out to a club, a party. There, one of my sons was telling me they were all going, him and all of his friends were heading to a club, and his spirit is just dancing. No, don't go. And he told them, he said, guys, don't let's go. Let's move away from it. And he said, it feels wrong. My dad, and he made the statement to them,
Mm-hmm.
my dad always say this. And then he told me, like, several hours later, they heard that there was a mass shooting within the club.
Oh my
And a lot
gosh.
of
So
people,
yeah.
yeah. So
So he followed
if
his
it feels wrong,
intuition. He followed his
yes.
intuition, but as you as a parent provided such guidance to follow that gut intuition. And I think, that's why we miss so many red flags along the way
Oh,
with
yeah.
relationships, until a huge defining moment.
Mm-hmm.
That like, for example, I had a best friend that I've known since we were 5, and we were just trauma bonded with each other, but we also just had fun. There's different stages of our relationship through our childhood and our teen years and adult lives, but so many things did not resonate with me, with my values. And she would
Yeah.
do things that I would never do, but she was very respectful of not forcing me to do some of the things she would do. And some of the decisions she made I thought were extremely unethical, but I just was in young adulthood, as well as older in our lives, in our 50s, there were some things that I was just like, boy, our values are very, very different, but I thought that we could just really kind of respect each other's difference. But sometimes it
Yeah.
gets to a point where you really, the differences are so much. And then when you find out of some betrayals, some significant
Oh, yes.
things where it's just unexpected. You have that light bulb moment where you finally say enough is enough. You follow that gut feeling to just
Yes.
get the heck away, because this is toxic and unhealthy. And and it's a matter of, I think, getting yourself to a certain point where you feel strong in your values enough to really let go. And it's hard because there's sadness and loss, but
Yes.
you're doing the right thing. So following your gut feeling in a positive way is also, a wonderful message that we need to kind of, pay attention to
Pay
be
attention.
discerning.
Yeah.
So I love that what you said. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right.
Yeah. If it feels wrong, it is wrong. And so I gained that knowledge from all of my life, not listening to to that
To that inner
intuition,
voice.
to that
Yeah.
inner voice. And a lot of I started to look at the relationships and what happened within those relationships that I had. And I saw that this common thread was always there. And once I located it, I was a single dad with 4 boys. And so once I located it and I saw what was happening and it kept repeating, I would tell them, I have found something, and this is what I found. And I would tell them, because I started understanding the human makeup, that the five senses can be manipulated. And if you're making a decision from your five senses, you can be deceived. But if you're making a decision from your inner man, you will not be deceived because it's coming as gathering other information. The five senses can be manipulated by man, and they're good. They know how to do it. But God put that inner voice within us that they cannot see. They don't know anything about it. They don't know how to manipulate that. And God forbid that they ever learn how to do that. That's when I think the human race will be done, because these people that have been able to manipulate the five senses, we see the damage that they do to individuals. Imagine if they had access to that other part. But we don't take ownership of our decision because we go against that voice. And when we take ownership of it, regardless of the relationship, we know that when we take ownership, we have made another decision that is contrary to what's standing before us. And it is painful because we've invested time in that relationship. We have invested much, and any type of severing of relationship, whatever it is painful. But when you have that inner voice, it's telling you that it is a necessary separation. And a lot of people, Doc, don't pay attention to that until it's late. 27 years, and like yourself, mine was somewhere around that time as well. So yes, we go through all of these things because we negate to listen to that inner voice that has always been speaking, still speaking today, but we have to become more in tune to it. Talk to us, Doc, as far as your book. You tell us about this great visitation that you had at your garage sale, and that's a powerful testimony to stand there and have that type of revelation, visitation, if you will. And from that visitation, you're able to produce this product that is able to guide people. How did that change and creating the book started to affect your life once you brought it into existence?
Oh, it was uphill from then on. It really was. And it wasn't just one event. There were numerous events that were spiritual experiences that really just got my attention. And I think it led me on a path of researching
Yeah.
spirituality and reestablishing my relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And not as a crutch at all to get through the hard times, nothing like that. It was really like just the light shining to awaken me to
Yeah.
that. Our universe is amazing, and we are really spiritual beings having a human experience here.
Yes, we are. I
That's how
agree.
I
Absolutely.
really changed and looked at it. It wasn't, and that made me kind of understand that there can be such evil things that humans do to one another. And, we're seeing so much of that even play out in our, society the last few years too. But with that knowing that there is a God and that goodness, does eventually prevail, and that, people that are out to harm people, with all sorts of different, scenarios through these five senses, like you said, there is going to be justice at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and because we are guided by, a divine being. So, yes, it was all uphill, and it really, the author in me was born as a result. I was so
Yeah.
compelled, like many other people that have had, near death experiences or spiritual transformative encounters, we're compelled to share our stories about the miracles we experienced. And there are so many. I mean, we would have to talk for hours and hours to really go into all of the different experiences. Some include being circled by 100 dragonflies, or having a dream visitation, or finding feathers and pennies and different people that really seemed otherworldly. Even having experiences come through electronics. It was almost like that was kind of jolting me to becoming an author. And,
Hmm.
my book was very well received. It won the 2020 Best Books Award and is a 5-star reader's favorite. It was endorsed by James Redfield, who wrote the
Yeah.
Celestine Prophecy. And, so that was pretty awesome to get that support. But I went on in my journey to write a 5-book series called True Deceit, False
Hmm.
Love. Because I was going into my life believing in true love
Yeah.
and not, there is true love out there, but there's also true deceit. And
Yes.
it's important to be, there's that discerning word again, but to be discerning of the differences between the two. So I didn't really set out to write a 5-book series. I had no other way of communicating with my adult children. So I
Hmm.
wanted to kind of process what I was going through, but bring awareness to
Yeah.
domestic violence and narcissistic abuse and parental alienation, as well as intergenerational family trauma. I wanted to bring awareness to that. And, in doing my own research, I was looking up terms and phrases to kind of understand, I didn't even know what gaslighting was, or projecting, I didn't know what a covert malignant narcissist was. I didn't know what parental alienation
Yeah.
was. As a lifelong learner, I wanted to seek out this information to understand what I was going through. And in doing so, I would write down terms to look up later and to connect the dots to my own experience. And before I knew it, I had 100 terms and then 1,000 and then 10,000. So at that point, I thought, I'm going to just put this in a book because I'm sure there's other men and women and grandparents and children that are experiencing these family trauma situations, that this might be helpful for them. And one thing led to another. That first book was prominently endorsed by some major influencers in the abuse recovery community, and I got the validation that I was on the right path, providing
Yeah.
something of value, kind of like in service, to kind of give
Hmm.
back to others while I was healing. And I went on to write 4 more books within a year with acrostic and free verse poetry and a survivor's workbook and even a word search puzzle book to help people use a creative, different part of their brain to try to work through some of this trauma, because we all heal and grow in different ways. And I wanted to provide some tools that were a little bit unconventional to help others in their growth, because it was so helpful to me. So, I went on to do that, and, I continue to grow and learn, and I have found writing to be very healing, and, being in nature has always
Hmm.
been something that has resonated with me. And, 3 years ago, after retiring, I moved from the Chicago suburbs to the Caribbean. So I am living life immersed in nature and in the rainforest, overlooking the ocean, and just I feel like I'm at a wonderful stage in my life where I'm just I had no idea that my life could be so beautiful after enduring what I had gone through. But it can get better, and I want to provide hope and some tools for other people to know that it can get better. And just trust your inner knowing, trust your gut feeling, and realize that God has your back.
I think that's, and people, I have to be careful when I say it, but I tell people that that's, God picks certain people to, as they're going through their journey. And the reason why he does that, because he can trust them. He can trust you, Dr. Marni, because
Yeah.
he knows that once you have gone through it, that you will be able to take what you have learned and present it in a format whereby others can be reached. And that is the key for it, because he is seeing that there's a greater need out there, and he needs a voice to tell the story, to tell those that are in pain that there is a way out, to tell those that are hurting that there is something else. And the Bible tells us, he says, that we are to comfort those in the way that we were comforted. And so we are familiar with that, so that when we are able to comfort them, where we are coming from will be a place of power, a place of familiarity. We know how they feel. We know how they're hurting because we can identify with it. And because we can identify with it, we will be more loving. We will be more patient. We will be more empathetic. All of these necessary character traits that are valuable in the space of holding someone and healing, bringing healing to them. And so you had to go through that because God can trust you to come out now with the information because he saw a lot of people in that same space and he wanted a voice, and you are that voice, and you're seeing the product of those things because he knew that it was in there, that gift that was given to you. And it usually comes out of a circumstance, a situation. It's hidden. And when we go through our journey and we discover our gifts, and I think this is one of the purpose for the journey, is so that we can discover our gift and then we can then live from that gift. Because there's another part of this deal that he says that we live on the curse when you work, and I believe he created that gift so that we don't live under this curse. Because when you operate in your gift, you can be there 40 hours a day. I tell people 49 hours a day, and you don't even feel that it's 49 hours a day. You are having such joy, such happiness, such peace, such beautiful experience that you're not noticing. And why? Because you're operating and living from your gift. That place is peace, power, strength, love, all of those things that we desire to have in our life. Now, this has been a powerful story, and I am so glad that you stopped by to share because there are a lot of people that are in your space today. COVID brought that information out even more, and we saw that an increase in abuse in with the family and all of these things. And because of you being through that, you are now able to present this cooked, wonderful dish whereby people can get an access to. Those that are listening to us, I want you to get and buy her books. You know how I feel about books because I read all the time. I love to study. When you buy an author's book, you are spending quality time, one-on-one time with them. It's personal stuff. The energy that they have put in those pages will leap into you and change you. And so I want you to buy all of her books. There's a series and her garage. I love that title, her visit.
God
And
came
so,
to my garage sale. And actually, even though it's a spiritual fiction, it was inspired by all true events.
yes,
So,
truth is
but
truth.
thank you for your kind words. And, Ken, also the Threads of Enlightenment podcast, and radio show, you really have a platform to have these candid conversations that are life changing. So, it's amazing what you are doing with whatever you have experienced in your life journey to come to this point to have a platform to enlighten so many people and give them hope and give them peace and power and realize that love is what it is all about. And we're here on this journey, and some wonderful things can come out of some challenging time.
I absolutely agree. And I thank you so much because we are greater than the sum of all of those things. They're temporal, but we are spirit and we are power. And I want them to get to see who they are because I want them to look into the mirror and don't listen to what those people say about you. Look into the mirror and tell yourself, you are an endangered species. Once I got that revelation, I first of all had a different relationship to myself, and then I had a different relationship to people because I know that everyone that stood in front of me was just as valuable as I was. I am an endangered species. Once I pass, my eye, my retina, my voice, my fingerprint, all of those things that they identify me as special and one of a kind on this planet will leave. and I will still exist because I am spirit. And so I try to let them know that there are greatness within them, and I want them to get it, hold on to it, and don't let anything keep them down. It is only temporary. Move, change your perspective, and you will change your life.
What a
Thank you,
beautiful
Doc.
message.
Thank you so much. And God bless you, and you have a wonderful time on your island.
Well, and you have a wonderful time on yours.